Hello friends, my name is Ihor Havryshchak. This is traditionally the platform of Channel 24. It is with great pleasure that I welcome our guest. This is a huge figure, the host of the Khodorkovsky live channel, Sergey Aslanyan. Sergey, hello, good evening.
Good evening. I hope he's kind.
Yes, Sergey, we have a live broadcast. Today is September 11th. I want to immediately ask our viewers, as always, to be active and not forget to comment in the online chat, ask, and, of course, put likes, because this is how the algorithms of the platform that does not work very well in Russia, YouTube, work. Well, at this moment, Sergey, the visit of high-ranking officials in Kiev continues. I'm talking about US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and, of course, British Foreign Secretary David Lammy. And of course, the first issue that everyone is talking about now, which is being resolved, is whether the United States of America will allow the United States to use ATACMS primarily on the territory of the Russian Federation to the full depth of the entire range of these missiles. Do you think Sergey will approve of the US decision or not? And, looking ahead, I want to ask, isn't it too late for this? Maybe it is worth not being fascinated now, so as not to be disappointed later. The most suspicious thing here is the amount of fuss and gestures that suddenly acquire the status of entire delegations around the simplest resolution. When high-ranking officials come to do what? When Churchill decided to help his nemesis, the Soviet Union, in World War II, after the German attack on the Soviet Union, he notified Roosevelt of the diversion of Lend-Lease in a single telegram. He simply told him that yes, Great Britain was in great need of weapons, and yes, without American help, of course, it would be very difficult, but he considered it necessary from June 2, 1941, to redirect some of the weapons that were going through the seas and oceans by such a difficult sea route from the United States of America to Great Britain, further along the route to Russia, to the Soviet Union. And there was no need. How many times did Churchill and Roosevelt meet during the war? There were a couple of conferences. Were they according to what parameters? They were on the post-war distribution of powers and the division of the world. Yalta Conference, Tehran Conference. Answer, in order to solve the question, how many tanks will you give me? 3. Listen, will you give me the 4th? And the submarine? Well, put a couple more boats, airplanes there, if possible, 10 things. On such an occasion, these tactical nuances are related to what? Not even in order to win the war, but in order to at least normally, continue, adequately respond to the attack. Do they need an important person to come, consider the situation and say, yes, Vladimir, you know, this is a really serious issue, I looked at how you are doing here in Kyiv, yes, you know, I understood a lot for myself. When they fool around like that, in fact, this is a very clear indicator that no one wants to do anything. Because in order to decide, to allow, to give, you don't need anything at all. It is enough to press one enter button. It is enough to nod once in a video call and say, yes, 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 please. Of course. Moreover, here it is. This weapon is already coming. These deliveries are already ongoing. What else do you need? No, you know, such a serious issue cannot be resolved right away. We have to discuss. We have to come. You know, we express a feeling of deep concern, because, you know, we don't understand here. Have you been there enough to not confuse the socket, and you definitely know how to press the button, right? You know, we have a button specialist, Antony Blinken, in the rank of Foreign Secretary. He will come and see, otherwise you don't know how to tie your shoelaces for just a couple of years, maybe you're slurping cabbage soup, as Wikipedia warned us. We need to take a look, we need to take it seriously somehow. Such a crucial moment, because you can accidentally win a war here. We need to figure it out, because. Why do you need to figure it out? And this is a very meaningful question, in which there is already an answer. And why didn't they give it before? And isn't it too late now? But I didn't want to before, and I don't want it now. Because you could have won the war with the whole of Ukraine on the third day, because after the Russian military machine ran into the character of the Ukrainian person. Not in armament, not in superiority. What superiority is there? In what? In weapons? No. Into the powerful Ukrainian army? No. In people. That's when it turned out that it was not possible to break the Ukrainians. Despite the fact that this war, this is the beginning, this is February 24th, this is not even fascism, this is not yet genocide. It's just the entrance of the army, and it turned out that the army, as always, is insolvent, and it can't do anything. It has already tried, and the shells ran out, and the tanks collapsed, and it was not clear at all where and what was happening. And Kiev failed in 3 days, and at the same time they fought back immediately. Because, well, Ukraine instantly bristles. This is not the cursed region, which they entered, and there are just grandmothers sitting on a rubble pile, saying, "Oh, look, the Ukrainians have come. Okay, guys, come in, what do you need?" No, it was Ukraine. That is, when Ukraine began to shoot back, it immediately, clearly, completely understood what was happening. And on the third day it was not possible to break it. Give me weapons. On the fourth stage you will understand what a very serious counteraction there will be. On the fifth it will already be a very serious work. On the sixth it will be a counterattack. On the 10th it will be the defeat of the advanced units, and then it will be the destruction of the rear and the transition to a serious counteroffensive along the entire front. 2 weeks later, a turning point in this war. A month later, a completely amazed Russia with a shocked president in the configuration of the current war that does not understand anything. And the task is to understand what it was, because Ukraine, armed, fought back. No, you know, this is too serious a matter for someone to win a war like this. Therefore, Antony Blinken will now come and squeeze out like this, like from a tube of toothpaste, another permission for, 966 kilometers. I guess you don't need missiles. Let's do this, at 520, and then we will meet again, and then we will discuss it again. Because this is a very serious issue. Ukraine must not win this war in any case. By the way, Sergey, in the context of the war, because Blinken, among other things, said the following: he wants to hear from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and other politicians what Kyiv's goals in the war are and what Washington can do to help achieve them. Don't you think that this is already very cynical and impudent? Because even I know, without being there in close circles, the goals of Ukraine. They have already been repeatedly announced. These are the borders of 1991. Unlike the United States of America, which has said many times that we are with Ukraine to the last. And it seems to me that you need to ask about the goals of the war from the one who asks in Kyiv, Blinken, because you come to Kyiv in the third year of the war and ask what the goals of the war are. This, it seems to me, is very cynical. At Vienna airport, there is a special counter for those who arrived in Austria by mistake, confusing it with Australia. And there is a whole herd of such people. And therefore there are special people who console everyone and say, well, you think, I confused Austria, Australia, of course, almost the same thing. True, the hook is like this, half the globe. And it is impossible to overcome it. When American President Joe Biden does not really understand who he is talking to now, what he is talking about now and what is happening around him. He is now at the funeral at a press conference. He is in the pool. They gently tell him, Joe, you have to kiss your hand here now, and nod your head here. I got it. He takes out a card, and most importantly, in order not to confuse, he clearly acts perfectly. And when America asks again, or, for example, Blinken, in general, speaks once, but it should have been clarified. This is also because he forgot, or maybe did not know, what some agreements, some negotiations were about. And what was in this thick folder that we put on the table and said, Anthony, read this one. You know, everything is written. This is a good lecture on the current situation in Ukraine. He flipped through it, said, show it on the map. Here, that's it. I remember, it's definitely not Argentina, no, but it's fine, good. I think I came from there and will talk to them. This is cynicism in the last place. First of all, it is indifference. The politician demonstrates his true attitude. When he asks for the 638th time, he says, by the way, we didn't finish it. Zhivnevsky had just such an intermediate. It is a pity that we did not hear the head of the transport department. And just like that, you can ask again if there is a head of the transport department here for a very long time. And Blinken will do so, because he doesn't care at all. Well, he had to come, he came. It was necessary to pull the cat by the tail, he pulled. You have to be shabby. He says that we are with Ukraine to the end. We are friends. Friends. Give me weapons. Sergey, Blinken's statement and arrival, how do they present it? Although Ukraine is defending itself, because if you are not allowed to hit with the weapons that you were given, then it is to be on the side of the one to whom you gave these weapons. You are defending the Russian Federation. It seems to me that the answer of Peskov, Putin's riverman, is still more surprising. Because, I quote, Peskov's attack answers the question of weapons and the fact that the United States of America can give the go-ahead for strikes on the Russian Federation. There is no need to expect any answers everywhere. A special military operation is the answer. This is Peskov's answer. What does it mean? What do you think, Sergey? Peskov. His task is always to talk about how great, good, thoughtful and according to plan. The configuration can be different, the words in the sentence are rearranged. Now Peskov is good. You can call him and say, Peskov, what are you doing? And he will immediately say, everything is fine, everything is according to plan, now, if anything, we are taking action, expressing deep concern, victory will be ours. I'm not asking you about that. We've run out of laundry detergent, and your wife calls you. Did you buy it or not? In any case, his answer will not be about what makes sense to look for some real content. It will be just a set of words. And when he says now, the special military operation is our response. Well, yes, of course, because it was Ukraine that attacked. I had to answer somehow. This is the malicious intent of the West, of course. Reagan said on this point that psychiatrists should talk to these people, and instead I talked to them. Because they seriously believe that America will attack the Soviet Union. Nothing has changed since then. And Peskov's text has not changed in this regard either. He will always say something on any occasion that we have already heard 1,000 times. You can ask again, there will still be no answer. Sergey, I already remember the meme video with Putin, where he says, they cheated, framed, thrown, overturned, abandoned there. What am I talking about? Because Shoigu, Sergei Shoigu, Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation and former Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, gave an interview to his propagandists and said the following, allegedly Turkey offered us that Ukraine had made a proposal not to hit the energy sector and not to hit the grain corridor, and we allegedly agreed, but the scoundrels from Ukraine entered the Kursk region, and, of course, we refused. Here again, Putin and his gang are playing good cops, because there is a separate story that Lavrov declares war, but I will quote this later. But Shoigu, I say, shows himself as a good policeman. They say, we are for peace, we are for good, but again they cheated, again wound up, again abandoned. It was certainly surprising to hear from Shoigu. In general, the appearance of this man in the frame was also surprising, because fortunately everyone forgot about him, breathed a sigh of relief. We told him that -1, let him sit somewhere, no matter what he is called, the director of the beach or the president of some all-Russian interplanetary all-galactic. Out of sight and out of mind. No, it appears. And he begins to talk about the fact that we had peace initiatives, that we agreed. And this is all in the context of what we just mentioned, quoting Peskov. This Ukraine attacked. This Ukraine launched a preemptive strike. This Ukraine viciously starts shooting at peaceful cities, residential areas, it hits hospitals, energy sectors, and therefore there was an agreement that you, Ukrainians, accidentally attacked us, the Russians, well, let's at least not hit nuclear facilities. Moreover, this conversation immediately against the backdrop of Chernobyl, where they entered literally quickly, began to dig in, mine and just prepare another environmental disaster. So no, the essence there is the opposite, peace is war, you just don't understand. And Ukraine, which attacked it, of course, again did not fulfill its obligations. Russia always courageously overcomes. It is always heroic. It is always deceived. It is very important for a gopnik to know that he robs not because he is just a freak, but because the situation is such that evil people have deprived him of the opportunity to earn, so he is without a penny. And these with fat wallets brazenly walk through his yard and will not even chip in at least 3 kopecks, but they could. That is why he cuts them. That's because he is a loser and did not get a job. They are to blame for this. This is exactly the same logic that Islamism has grown, for example, all over the world. Because it was the pale faces who did not give enough. And this part of the Islamists is very much offended. She has a huge list of claims to the civilized world. You must feed us, clothe us, let us go to Siberia, to France, to Germany. We're you in full, and you have to wipe yourself and pay us more, and add a little food to us. And, by the way, at the same time you owe us much more, we just behave modestly. This is the situation when I suddenly feel it. But this is how logic works. This is how it works for psychopaths, for gopniks, for religious fanatics, for Islamists, for Putin and, accordingly, for all the service personnel. They didn't give it, they robbed it. It's unfair, but we are for the truth, and we are just warriors of light, so we will now bring our own, in this case, the Russian world. Because there is still the Islamic world, there are various other configurations, so we will bring it now, and you are obliged. Why do you have to? Because we are stronger, we are more right, and you have offended us, deceived us, robbed us, and you owe us this. And when Shoigu appears and says that there were such agreements, that okay, let's just cut people, but let's not disrupt nuclear power plants, because, well, you think, a couple of hundred, a couple of thousand were slaughtered there, then the energy sector was saved. This is important. Even here he really does not feel what an amazing context he gives about that war is normal. But just let's follow the rules in this war so as not to spoil what we will never be able to fix later. And let's put it this way, we will just kill people, and not with some special subtext or the possibility of prolonged consequences, when it will be murder, but also nuclear contamination of the territory. It will be impossible to live there. Let's just kill. Well, the war happened, right? Let's do it this way, okay, just kill there, then cut off the heads alive there. Well, how is it customary in our country? But only the material and technical values are blacker, because, especially the Soviet government, it is still very materialistic, it is very greedy. It is always very important that people are not important, things are important, money is important, property is very important. Why? In the Soviet Union, the criminal code always implied any punishment with confiscation. Execution by firing squad with confiscation, imprisonment with confiscation. This is how the Chekist logic was arranged. And when Shoigu is told that there was a proposal, minus the nuclear potential, let's not hit nuclear power plants. And there was no proposal not to fight at all. Was there a proposal not to kill? No, there was no such offer. We wanted to correct it. And here again we were shamelessly completely deceived. And we are now forced to get dirty in all white in this dirty adventure, which was unleashed, of course, not by us. Well, of course, who would have doubted? Sergey, by the way, we are online. Let me remind you that we have a live broadcast to our viewers. The Secretary of State of the United States of America announced that Zelenskyy and Biden will meet in Washington on Friday, September 13th, 2 days later. And I will remind our viewers that on August 27th, Zelenskyy announced his desire to present a plan for Ukraine's victory to Trump and presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Trump. You have already mentioned that Joe Biden is now in a state that he is not very different. Where is the fun? Where is the funeral? And so on. What do you think, Sergey? Now there is a meeting between Zelenskyy and Joe Biden. Does it affect something? Can Zelenskyy convince Biden of something? And is Biden deciding anything now? This is a protocol meeting, and such events always imply our Russian, or Soviet, attitude, when the world is closed to one person. If you have made an agreement with the king, then it is clear that you have agreed with everyone and everything at once. And for us, it is just completely normal and logical when they come and negotiate with Brezhnev, if Brezhnev said or, for example, with Stalin. Stalin said, no, there, or Stalin said, yes. And this means that the state said, yes, or the state said no. And we, among other things, when discussing this issue, imply that if the first person of one state comes to the first person of another state, then this is an agreement between Volodymyr Zelensky and Joe Biden. And if this agreement is reached, it means inviolable fulfillment. Nothing of the kind. This is a meeting that is being prepared by both sides. This is the presidential level. Therefore, even if Zelensky does not come there or nothing encourages Biden to this meeting, it will still take place, because it is not Volodymyr Zelensky personally who goes there to Joe Biden, but a representative of Ukraine with issues important for Ukraine, to a representative of America who is able to resolve these important issues. And it does not happen that they come and talk about something. Sometimes, he came to confirm the documents of intent previously sent for discussion, the protocols, which are exactly the true purpose of the visit. Fix, clarify, rewrite, revise, but meetings between presidents are not meetings between people personally. These are meetings between states. And Zelensky goes there after all very important Ukrainian topics have been previously provided to America for discussion. And Joe Biden will either nod his head, or not, or simply forget to come to this meeting. It is also possible. But most likely, firstly, there is no surprise, and secondly, agreements have already been reached on most issues. And some of these agreements are taking place at this second, when Blinken is again communicating with representatives of Ukraine. And Sir Blinken, having agreed, clarified, will come to Biden and say, Joe, yes. And Biden will come out and say, yes, of course, what are you talking about? Vladimir, I am yours forever, I am always with Ukraine, we are going down the aisle. Oh, sorry, I mixed it up. Sergey, I remember, of course, the debates between representatives for the post, candidates for the presidency of the United States of America, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Tell me, please, Sergey, were you surprised by Trump's answers? Let me remind our viewers that Trump was asked twice if he wanted Ukraine to win the war against Russia. He stubbornly said twice that he wanted an end to the war. Should this alarm us, or are these expected answers from a person who, in my opinion, has neither a plan nor a plan B regarding negotiations or the war in Ukraine? It's like fuzzy logic, yes, no, and maybe. That is, a third meaning appears. Biden answers the twice questioned yes or no, because Vladimir Trump is Trump. Trump answers what they wanted to squeeze out of him, but could not and did not get it, because he really has a serious, well, some idea. When he becomes president, well, such a possibility is not excluded. He will have the issue of Ukraine 638 on the list. He is an economist, he is a businessman, he has completely different problems. And every time he meets with voters, he takes part in debates, when he in one way or another in the public space pronounces his future position, his future presidency, he does not talk about Ukraine, because he does not care about it at all. He is being pestered about this from the outside, having reached out at the last moment, because basically everything is about the social sector, about taxes, about what will happen in America. That is, this is the president, as is customary in the United States of America, this is the president who solves the problems of the country, but does not solve the problems of the world. And then he quietly says so by the sleeve, and this is Ukraine there. And by the way, there is also Myanmar, and there, by the way, Iraq and Afghanistan too. What do you think? After all, when we are presented with the opportunity to hear an answer about Ukraine in this discussion, this does not mean that these deputies did not have other questions. And what do you think about the Australian question? What is Australian question? What happened there? Have you run out of kangaroos? What's going on there? Or are there some modern problems again? No. What are you talking about? Are we not privy to the Australian agenda of Burma? Well, which is Myanmar? Do you know it on the map? Can you find it? What questions are there? What about this? I don't think anything about it. But Ukraine, what? What kind of Ukraine is there? Honduras. Let this Honduras not bother me. You need to answer something. And here he is on very thin ice, because he cannot afford specifics, precisely because he has already stated that he knows. He has a special house of cards and unpredictably pulls out the joker, declaring, that's it, the war is over. I declare the war over. How? Why? In what ways? That is, what will you do for this? Don't worry, I'll do it. Details? What are these details? There can be no details. And he, of course, gets out of it. Without hearing an answer, we actually understood everything. We realized that just as America as a whole doesn't care about Ukraine, Joe Biden doesn't care about Ukraine, and Trump doesn't care at all. And in order for him to ascend this throne, he, of course, does not need Ukraine. If he was interested in it, he would, for example, tell the American electorate, America, you know, if you vote for me, I will not just be the peacemaker and the #1 president on planet Earth. I will be the person who will bring peace to Ukraine. Do you know, Americans, my dears, how important it is? Here the Americans will shrug their shoulders and say, what is Ukraine? In which state? Is Ukraine in New Jersey? And what happened there? Have milk yields dropped? Because America doesn't live by that either. And that is why in his rhetoric, in an attempt to defeat Kamala Harris, he does not have any serious arguments, and there is no serious preparation for the Ukrainian issue. Because he has already said, well, that's it, I won the war, well, that's it, now I'm president, in 5 minutes it will be over. How? Later. Sure, fry the fish. And where are the fish? Yes, you fry, there will be fish. He has other questions, he has a different task. He communicates with his domestic voter. He does not decide on foreign policy issues. But he has made it clear that he, like any other American president, does not care. Sergey, let's get closer to Ukraine then, let's return to our continent. Turkish President Tayyip.Erdogan in his video message to the participants of the Crimean platform, which is now the 4th Crimean platform and is taking place in Kyiv, said that the Russian-occupied Crimea should return to Ukraine in accordance with international law. Erdogan also recalled that the Crimean Tatar people are also suffering more than ever because of the occupation of Russia. How seriously should these words of Erdogan be taken? How new are these words in the direction of Russia? Or is it Turkey that is maintaining its policy, which it has kept before? It does not recognize the annexation of Crimea and the territory of Ukraine. On September 11th, at noon Turkish time, it was very beneficial for Erdogan to say these words. It is possible that in 15 minutes others are more profitable for a different audience. Turkey has no friends, Turkey has no enemies, Turkey has political interests. If this is on Turkey's list of interests today, then so be it. If something changes in 15 seconds, what is Crimea like? Who's Crimea? Ukrainian? Why on earth? What are you talking about? My tomatoes are rotten here. I need to go to Russia now. 25 trains with tomatoes, otherwise I will have such tomato inflation this year that I will not know what pineapples there are until the end of the year. Yes, I need to sell tomatoes now. Sold tomatoes? Of course. Crimea is naturally Ukrainian, because Russia has already used everything. And here, again, in the example of relations with Putin, we see how the relations between the countries are clearly completely turning like a weather vane in terms of the conjuncture. Either for Russia, or against, then the ambassador was killed, send us a new one, then a Russian pilot was shot down, awarded posthumously, then a street was named after the ambassador, and a memorial plaque was hung to the pilot. It is profitable. Turks are like this all their lives. One thing, of course, can be traced in the centuries as a whole. Turkey is always an enemy of Russia, but Turkey is also an enemy of a huge number of other people who, by and large, have nothing to do with it. Well, for some reason, the enemy. If she supports Ukraine, well, thank you. But the Bayraktars, at least, played a very serious role at the initial stage of the war. And Turkey does not supply Bayraktars to Russia. It follows from this that, probably, after all, Crimea is most likely Ukrainian from Erdogan's point of view. But it is not a fact, because in 15 minutes the tomatoes may go rotten, and you will need to sell them urgently somewhere. Sergey, and if the end of the block is already about Turkey, here is the publication Middle East Eye says the following: Putin is again preparing a visit to Turkey. He has been preparing for a long time. He cannot fly there. And the last wish, so to speak, of the dictator is that his Russian fighters accompany his plane during a trip to Turkey, because he is allegedly afraid that some Ukrainian drone or other missile could hit this plane. But, as I understand it, the publication, referring to its sources, says that Turkey is not ready to provide and give the go-ahead for the use of fighters, because the air defense in Turkey is NATO and this can be regarded as an enemy aircraft. Do you think Putin will still dare to fly or not? And to what extent can a situation really arise that Putin's plane will be shot down?
Как вы считаете, все-таки отважится Путин лететь, не отважится? И насколько действительно вы считаете, что может быть такая ситуация, что вдруг самолет Путина и собьют?
A geopolitical lottery called Putin leaned out of the hole, he went to Mongolia. And in Mongolia, there was an opportunity to regain that very historical role, when it was she who decided who ruled Russia, since it was the Mongols who issued the Yarlik for the rain. But the Mongols did not dare, because the Mongols turned out to be very lacking due to their economy. The Mongolians have their own oil, the Mongolians have their own oil refining, and nevertheless, for some reason, their gasoline is Russian. Moreover, there is no worse Russian fuel in the world, and Mongolians suffer a lot from this, from the fact that the worst fuel in the world is poured into the Mercedes and Toyotas they drive. But they did not dare to help planet Earth. Erdogan gets Putin. Erdogan has an eternal problem. He really wants to join the European Union. An obstacle to the ratification of the application is Cyprus, which is occupied. Half has been chopped off and belongs to Turkey. And until Turkey returns half of Cyprus, it will not see prospects in the European Union, not even documents submitted for consideration. If Erdogan is a strategist, he takes out his Janissary sword and negotiates semi-ornately. Let's put it this way, I give you Putin, and you give me the EU. Is such an agreement possible? Well, hypothetically, it cannot be ruled out, again given the duplicity of Turkey, which today is a friend for Russia and today an enemy. If you look through the history textbook, then, of course, Turkey has never been a friend, but only an enemy. And let Putin in, solemnly feed him, walk him around the city, parade with him at some event, and then carefully pack him in a box and, fortunately, our NATO country will try to attack me, take him somewhere to The Hague. A good geopolitical lottery. Will it work out or not? Moreover, of course, the recognition of the system is someone else's. In no case will a NATO country recalibrate some military aircraft through its territory for one flight. These are Russian aircraft, they are recorded in the memory of anti-aircraft missile systems as enemy, so as soon as they stick their noses, they will immediately be shot down. Or on an armored train, and the borders between Russia and Turkey are somehow not very guessable, although you can try to go under the bottom of the Caspian Sea. But there are, of course, options. You can try to enter the territory not by air. There is an armored train, an armored submarine exists, after all, the Caspian flotilla too. Go and have a rest. This option can be in principle. But, of course, it is very curious how many more times Putin will dare to lean out of the hole and go beyond the perimeter, and how many more countries are not going to do and will not do anything about it, although Turkey, of course, is not a friend.
Огромное количество геополитических проблем, которые они наворотили за последние кто годы, а кто и десятилетия.
Turkey immediately took the tone very correctly and begins to show off. And he says, I won't miss the planes. Next, please, your turn. Sergey, I also promised to remember the statement of Sergey Lavrov after his reincarnation or whatever you want to call it. Well, I won't offend the horses, because I know that you love these beautiful creatures, so I'll do without it. But I quote, after the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf, which was visited by Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, he said the following, we have never wanted someone else's land. We just wanted people who are an integral part of the Russian world, Russian culture, Russian language, history and religion, to be treated humanely, as required by international law. If you want to comment, if not, Sergey, you cannot comment. A huge number of the same people mentioned, but in fact ordinary Russians and even with Soviet passports, remained on the territory of the Union republics, especially in Central Asia. And all these people were abandoned by the peace-loving Lavrov in the same way as the Russian government. Because these people in Turkmenistan, in Uzbekistan, in Tajikistan were left without support, without pensions and without prospects. Despite the fact that they ended up there due to the friendship of peoples, many of them were not of their own free will. Well, it so happened that they lived there, and then it was too late to leave. And they remained citizens of Russia, and they remained Russian and Soviet. They speak Russian, their surnames are Ivanov, Petrov, Sidorov. And these are the very people whom for some reason you really want to protect at all costs in Ukraine, without claims to foreign land. But without these same claims to someone else's land, we absolutely do not want to defend in Kazakhstan, in Tajikistan, in Kyrgyzstan, in Uzbekistan and in Turkmenistan. I don't want it at all. Therefore, of course, Lavrov, as well as his policy, as well as the policy of Russia, it is, of course, duplicitous. It naturally contains an obligatory element of meanness and in no way touches on what is really important, necessary and very much would like to hear if they were talking. Because those who are still living, including having retained Soviet passports, in the former Soviet republics, really need Lavrov to tell the truth. Here's what he said to be true. No, it was just politics and diplomacy. Sergey, the last question, I would like to know your opinion. These are the partners of Ukraine. I do not call them allies, but partners. There were many countries. There was a congress at the Ramstein Air Base. In Germany, there were many representatives. In your opinion, this deck of cards of European countries and Western countries, they are also called the collective West, but they cannot be called collective either, because at least Orban will not allow this to be done. So, is there a card with Ukraine, and what is its mass and size, and is there a place for Ukraine in this deck of cards? When Ukrainian representatives find themselves somewhere at international forums, they are of great interest. Because everyone really wants to see a real Ukrainian. Before that, they were only on TV. And every time there is a discussion of Ukraine, contacts with Ukraine and some serious conversations about Ukraine, around Ukraine and with Ukrainians, this is a purely human interest, like when you are shown, for example, our Siamese twin. You haven't seen him before. It used to be like this sometimes in the circus, then it ended in the circus. And then they said, listen, we're going to bring you a living Ukrainian in Ramstein. Stunned. And what? Can you touch it with your hand? Of course. You can even ask him a question in German, and maybe in English. You know, he'll answer you. That's all, in fact, because Ramstein is going for the umpteenth time. Is it like the EU, which signs a package of sanctions against Russia? 15th, 38th, 289. And the result? No result. It was never planned. No. Well, what are you talking about? We express our deep concern. We are partners. Of course, we are for it. Maybe we will already decide something. Maybe we can do something. Oh, look, and he, it turned out, was smiling. Oh, really real. By the way, the suit on him is good, by the way. Everything is just like ours. It does not differ at all. Maybe you should pour some tea. Let's see. Look, finally, he uses a teaspoon. Oh, how great. This is how it looks. And, of course, without losing face, because we are partners. Sergey, thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you for taking the time, paying attention and explaining the different processes in Turkey and overseas in the United States. Our viewers, please like, comment and subscribe. Thank you very much. Thank you, goodbye. I remind our viewers that Sergey Aslanyan, a public figure and host of the Khodorkovsky Life channel, was with us. Share our conversation. This is important. This is how YouTube algorithms work. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. I will see you later.